Hi. Welcome to Finance, Business and Investing. What do Vikings, smartphones and YouTubers have in common? They're all antifragile. Things that benefit from disorder are antifragile. We will now look at what antifragility is and how we as humans can sometimes intervene too much with randomness, making us fragile in the process. How can one tell what is antifragile? Why is antifragility the answer to the black swan problem? Finally, we can learn from an asymmetric strategy named after a barbell takeaway #1, which introduces the triad, fragile, robust, and antifragile. We will now look at the triad to better understand what antifragility is. All good things come in threes, and antifragility exists on a spectrum alongside robustness and fragility. The difference between the three is how they react to randomness, uncertainty, stressors, errors, and most importantly, time. When faced with uncertainty, the fragile breaks, the robust doesn't care, and the antifragile, and here comes the central point of the book, becomes stronger. In Norse mythology, for example, the god Balder was protected from almost all harm when his father Odin attempted to have every creature and living thing swear an oath not to harm his son. The problem was that he had forgotten about the mistletoe. As a result, the evil god Loki created an arrow from the plant and used it to kill Balder. In this example, the boulder represents that which is vulnerable to physical harm. The board in Valhalla is another well-known creature from Nordic folklore. The Vikings were said to have killed the boar every evening and feasted on its meat. But the boar was resurrected every morning. It was clearly strong. Regardless of how much physical damage the board received from bacon-loving Vikings, it survived to serve as an example of anti-fragility. Take, for example, the Vikings. They believed that dying in battle would grant them access to Valhalla. So being wounded was not something they feared. This gave them an advantage when fighting the frail English and Frenchmen. Another example. Have you ever dropped your smartphone somewhere other than your bed or a super soft carpet? This is in contrast to the days when cell phones could withstand almost any physical damage. Consider throwing your phone to the ground only to find it. Multiplying 22 brand new phones with the most up-to-date software and gadgets. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Finally, consider the stressor of a bad reputation and the impact it has on your career, depending on the profession you've chosen. You are vulnerable in this aspect if you have chosen to climb the corporate ladder. Any errors you make will be permanently recorded in the personnel department and may jeopardize your job prospects. Consider the self-employed cab driver in a big city. It makes no difference to him if he makes a mistake with one client. He can simply go and pick up one of the other million potential customers who has no idea how he performed on his last drive. Finally, consider the YouTubers, and the fragile too bad reputation. The more people who dislike us, the more money we make. Not only do negative comments and thumbs down boost the YouTube algorithm, but consider word of mouth as well. I can't tell you how many times I've been advised to watch something based on how horrible, crunchy, crazy or just plain bad it was said to be. So the antifragile is something that benefits from randomness, uncertainty, stressors, errors, and time. Though the Vikings did not benefit much from their bad reputation, and the YouTuber does not enjoy physical harm. Furthermore, anti-fragility often only works up to a point. A YouTuber who gains a bad reputation and ends up in jail cannot be said to have benefited from it. I suppose the next step will be to see how intervention can turn something anti-fragile into something fragile. Takeaway #2. Naive interventionism, or, as we say in Sweden, bare favors. What do soccer moms think? Your coworker. He spends the entire day using hand antiseptics and bailing out politicians. Banks have a lot in common. They are transforming the antifragile into something vulnerable. Children do not require protection from every potential danger in life. They also do not require assistance in overcoming every obstacle. Up to a point, an individual's personal development is resistant to harm and obstacles. Or, to put it another way, it benefits from it by removing these stressors from one's childhood. In contrast, is likely to result in a very weak and fragile adult. Similarly, using hand antiseptics and avoiding public places because you are afraid of contracting a disease will deprive your immune system, which is sensitive to stressors, making it weaker. The removal of such stressors is most likely the cause of today's allergies and autoimmune diseases. Antiseptics, combined with antibiotic overuse, strengthen antifragile bacteria, resulting in antibiotic resistance. Finally, economists and politicians are interfering in the economy by deeming something too big to fail and thus refusing to let nature take its course. Weeding out vulnerable firms early allows for minimal harm to the system as they would otherwise grow to cause systemic problems. In Sweden, Nassim Taleb refers to this as naive interventionism. In plain English, we call it doing someone a bare favor. It's referred to as trying to help but causing more harm than good, or fixing things that should be left alone. There is a central illusion in life that randomness is bad and that we can eliminate randomness by eliminating randomness. The truth is that if we can't, we'll just end up with a fragile structure that will cost us more in the long run. Takeaway number 3 is detecting what is fragile and antifragile using concavity and convexity. This is going to be a little technical, but there is a way to detect what is fragile and what is antifragile. Consider yourself driving a car and having difficulty parking. So you occasionally run into things when parking the car, such as neighboring cars, walls, road signs, and slow pedestrians. You've lost count of the number of times this has occurred. However, when you add up the scratches in the car's paint, a rough estimate says it's about 20 times. In any of the accidents, you did not exceed 5 km per hour, or 3 miles per hour. Consider driving that car into a wall 5 times at 2,100 km per hour, or approximately 60 miles per hour. Will it have the same impact on your vehicle? Clearly, your car is not fragile. The harm is not proportional to the stressor, i.e., the impact velocity on a wall was 5 km per hour. Hitting it 20 times will result in a lot of scratches, and hitting it at 100 km per hour will send the vehicle straight to the car cemetery. A nonlinear relationship on a graph and a so-called concave function can demonstrate this mathematically. The antifragile can also be identified by its nonlinear response to a given stressor, but in this case the function is convex rather than concave. In other words, it responds positively to the stressor, and even more so if the intensity is increased to a certain point. Muscle growth is resistant to physical exhaustion, and lifting 100 kg in deadlift for a single repetition is more beneficial than lifting 10 kg. These concave and convex functions have an interesting property that is 10 times the average time average. Understanding the variance in the underlying variable x is far more important. In many situations, it is more important to understand the average of it. Another example of the inverse situation is when you are told that investing in early-stage biotech companies is a bad idea. One of your friends disagrees, claiming that 80% of biotech startups fail within the first year, and 15% fail within the first 5 years. And, yes, I believe only 5% survived more than 5 years. What your friend overlooks in this case is the nonlinear relationship that exists between the company's survival and your return as a stock owner. This is a convex function, and just one of these top 5% companies could have you set for life, with returns in the tens of thousands of percentage points. If you want to learn more, read my summary of Angel How to Invest in Technology Startups. The so-called Lindy effect determines another way to detect what is likely to be fragile and what is likely to be antifragile. But more on that later. The solution to the black swan problem is revealed in the 4th video takeaway. First, let's go over what a black swan event is. It is unpredictable and has a significant impact. The impact is so significant that Nassim Taleb contends that the outcome of these events determines society to a large extent, and negative black swans cause a lot of trouble. So it would be ideal if they could be predicted. But that's the problem with the unpredictable. It is impossible to predict. What is far more straightforward is determining whether a system is vulnerable to black swans. We understand that if an airplane crashes, everyone on board will perish. We cannot predict when or how this will occur. But we recognize that it is possible. So, what are our options? We can try to make the system less fragile by making it more robust or antifragile. By emphasizing the risk of failure. We make predictions about failure largely irrelevant. Returning to the airplane example, we check people for weapons before they board. Not because we believe they are armed, but because the risk we put ourselves in if we don't is too great. Remember the concave property of the fragile systems from the previous takeaway. The screening of passengers increases the workload for airline personnel, but it is insignificant in comparison to the price that passengers must pay. If an accident occurs in a fragile system, we add redundancy to lessen the fragility. Nature understands this very well. For example, humans have 2 kidneys, 2 breasts, 2 testicles if male fat reserves, and so on. Furthermore, we are antifragile in the sense that our bodies overcompensate for stressors. If you do one representative of 100 kilograms deadlift, your body will prepare you for the next time you lift 110 kilograms. Humans do not understand this as well as nature does. Unfortunately, we have a tendency to eliminate redundancy in the name of efficiency. We also tend to believe that the worst-case scenario we've witnessed is also the worst-case scenario for the future. This is one of the reasons why so many people lost their jobs when the stock market crashed by 22% in a single day in October 1987. Up until that point, the worst return from a single day had been in October 1929, with a 12% crash. Warren Buffett is well known for his use of redundancy in his investments. He suggests that one should only invest in businesses that are so fantastic that an idiot could run them, because one will sooner or later. The difference between good and bad systems is that good systems are designed to have small errors that are independent of one another. In fact, the errors are negatively related to one another, because we learn from them. For the investor, having an uncorrelated bets portfolio consisting of only stocks from the energy sector, for example, is vulnerable to the black swan event that a new competitor enters the market with an innovation that beats the living hell out of the current technologies available, such as energy made from a small portable fusion reactor or something similar. Furthermore, an anti-fragile or robust system frequently includes options. Think about evolution. Perhaps the best example of a non-fragile system. Individuals die, and species go extinct from time to time. The genes that survive outperform those that die. The fittest survive. How does nature manage to do this? It's because of the option. If the dinosaurs can't handle the current situation, perhaps mammals can be included as an option in one's investment strategy. Benjamin Graham was well known for investing in companies whose stock price was less than the value of their assets. Such an investment provides flexibility. The company has a good chance of succeeding. And in that case, it's fantastic. If the business fails, the company can still be liquidated, and the shareholders will keep a large portion of their initial investment. The barbell strategy is the 5th takeaway. The barbell strategy entails protecting oneself from large losses while also exposing oneself to a large potential upside. It is a method for replicating the convex function. Number 1 takeaway. 3. Let's look at how females in some species use this approach and how you can use it whether you're female or not in your choice of occupation and when investing in some monogamous species, including humans. They marry the stable and secure beta male, ensuring their offspring's survival. While they occasionally cheat with the alpha male, giving them the potential of securing the strongest genes to their offspring while minimizing downside and maximizing potential upside. Consider going for something conservative and something hyper-aggressive at the same time when making your career decision. For example, you can combine a 9-to-5 job or an education with entrepreneurial endeavors in your spare time. Or you can rely on safe investments to generate some income every month just to put food on the table while aggressively pursuing the entrepreneurial path with all of your time and effort outside of finance. Many professionals have a misunderstanding of how to make long-term profits. They believe that the emphasis should always be on developing bets that will make them a lot of money. But what is most important is that it is different. The difference appears minor, but the most important thing is not to lose. The first rule of investing, according to Warren Buffett, is to never lose money. The first rule of investing is to never forget the first rule. If you don't believe Buffett, consider what Ray Dalio, another of the world's top 100 richest people who made his fortune through investing, says. This ensures that the probability of the unacceptable, i.e., going bankrupt, is impossible. The barbell effect can be achieved by investing a large portion of your portfolio in ultra-conservative investments and a smaller portion in ultra-aggressive investments. This was previously discussed in my summary of Nassim Taleb's book, The Black Swan. Please watch that video. If you want to know more, there is a convex relationship between how many times you hear something and how long you can remember it. As a result, the antifragile system becomes stronger from things like randomness, uncertainty, stressors, and time-positive antifragility systems are often better left alone. Fragility and antifragility can be detected by their nonlinear response to stressors. A fascinating property of the nonlinear is that variance becomes much more important than averages, making it impossible to predict future events and largely irrelevant as long as you can control your exposure to them. Using the barbell strategy, you can have your cake and eat it too. The Lindy effect is the sixth takeaway. Assume you are the owner of a life insurance company. If your business model is that you will pay $1 million if a person dies, who will pay the higher premium one? Lawrence Svensson, an 80-year-old Swedish man in perfect health, or to Joanne Sense in the 30-year-old Swedish woman who is also perfectly healthy? Given this information, you would expect Johan to live longer than Lars, requiring Lars to pay a much higher insurance premium. Assume you are the owner of another life insurance company. This one has a distinct business model. It protects authors from having their books removed from the New York Times bestseller list, which would force them to pay a higher premium. One is the author of the book that has been on the list for 10 years, and the other is the author of the book that has been on the list for 10 months. We realized that the situation is exactly the opposite of the first example, and that the author of the younger book would have to pay the higher premium. Why is it that in the case of non-perishable items, the oldest is also expected to last the longest? The Linda effect occurs when the future is in the past. If something has been around for 10 years, we can probably expect it to last another 10. If something has been around for 100 years, we can expect it to be around for another 100. Things that have been around for a while are not aging in the same way that people do, but rather aging backwards. In the first video, we discussed how to distinguish between what is fragile and what is not. The Lindy effect is a good example of this. We can conclude that something that has survived for a long time, whether it is an idea, habit, a building technology, a book, or a company, is either robust or antifragile. We can do this because time is the ultimate stressor, something that has survived. Time has unavoidably survived a slew of random events, and anything fragile would have perished as a result. Here are 3 investor implications. Companies that have been profitable for a long time should be valued more than those that have only been profitable for a few years. Everything else being equal, fund managers with a long positive track record are typically a better choice than young superstars betting against what is fragile, as Nassim Taleb himself demonstrated during the financial crisis in time. Those who reap small known benefits while exposing themselves to large unknown losses are the suckers. Take the opposite side of such a bet and you'll win. According to Warren Buffett, the only way to find out who has been swimming naked is when the tide goes out. Takeaway number 7, the green lumber fallacy. According to the story, a man named Joe Siegel was one of the most successful traders of a commodity known as green lumber. The other traders couldn't figure out how this guy was so successful. He had no idea what the most basic property of this commodity was. That green lumber referred to freshly cut lumber, not lambada, which Joe Siegel thought drove the other traders insane. How can someone who knows nothing be a better trader than them? The green lumber fallacy occurs when we mistakenly believe that some visible knowledge is the key to success when it is something entirely different, something less visible. There is less narrative. All Joe Siegel might not have realized that green referred to freshly cut, but he certainly knew other things about the commodity that were far more important for being a great trader in it. When Nassim Taleb was trading professionally, he had a similar colleague. The guy was the most successful trader at the department in Swiss francs, the Swiss currency. Despite this, he couldn't even locate Switzerland on a map. He had no idea what languages were spoken there, and he had never visited the country. This is an important takeaway. Humans value narratives when someone cannot explain why they are successful in their field, such as when they claim to be great traders of green lumber but have no idea what green lumber is. We don't believe them. Reality, on the other hand, is unconcerned with narratives. Reality is only concerned with getting things done, and the factors that are causally leading one to success are sometimes hidden from us. We judge others as ignorant when it is only we who are ignorant. Back when we were 13 or so, one of my classmates was into entrepreneurial projects and was building websites for various purposes. My best friend and I kept talking nonsense about this guy and seriously doubted his ability to achieve any kind of success doing what he was doing. He barely passed his school tests. How could he possibly be a successful businessman? We had to eat it all up when he sold his first website for around $30,000, which was a lot of money for a 13-year-old. We were clearly making a green lumber mistake. We were combining the skills required to achieve the highest grades in school with the skills required to become a great entrepreneur. Takeaway number 8. Less is more. Consider the following statement. When looking at this example, which factor or factors do you think matter for the statement? That guy clearly is a criminal, he has bad table manners, he killed a lot of people, he has bad breath, and he's also a bad driver. He is a thief. It's probably number 2 here. It is quite simple to determine what is signal. To put it another way, what is important and what is noise. In other words, that which is completely irrelevant. In reality, signal-to-noise separation is not always as simple. Unfortunately, data is abundant due to connectivity, but data is toxic in large quantities because more of it is noise and only a portion of it is signal. The greater the amount of data, the lower the percentage of signal. To put it another way, less is more. We might miss the big truck if we pay attention to the eye collars of those around us when crossing the street. Did you check your online brokerage account today to see how your portfolio was doing? Well, I did, and while I was pleased, I had to remind myself whether this was really important. And, of course, the answer is no, it does not. Your portfolio's daily fluctuations are most likely 99% noise and 1% signal. So the fact that I made 1.47% in a single day in the stock market means nothing. Nothing is repeated by me. It is critical to consider this when making important decisions, such as investing, selecting a partner, purchasing a home, or whatever. Our decision was based on signal, not noise. If the situation had been reversed, and I had lost 1.47%, I would have decided to sell off some of my companies because, well, I don't want companies with negative returns. That decision would have been based on 99% noise in my opinion. For such a decision, I would have been much better off checking my portfolio once or twice a year. Less is more once more. We check less frequently, but in an unexpected way. This provides us with more information than checking frequently because the information is more signal and less noise. Many fund managers are affected by this. They are rearranging their portfolios too frequently as a result of recent performance. Here's what Warren Buffett thinks about rearranging your portfolio. Don't do anything. Simply stand there. In the previous video, I discussed naive interventionism, which occurs when someone interferes with a perfectly functioning system. One source of this is information overload. To become a great investor, you don't need to read the news every morning or monitor the daily fluctuations in your portfolio. The only people you should be acting on can always reach you. Negative to positive takeaway number 9 is stated in takeaway number 7, the green lumber fallacy. Finding causal relationships can be difficult at times. People want to know how to do something, but it's usually just as important, if not more important, to know what not to do. Remember Nassim Taleb's favorite example about the black swan? Subtraction is often more robust in terms of causality than addition. No amount of white swan observation can allow the inference that also wants a white, but a single black swan observation is sufficient to refute that conclusion. Here are 3 more examples. Happiness. What brings you joy right now? What causes you to be unhappy? The second question is usually easier to answer. Happy. Friends, family, and money. Perhaps you're dissatisfied. Yeah. I despise it when my boss micromanages me, when my kids don't listen, when I back out or do something out of fear, when I have a hangover and feel nauseated, when my iPhone dies at 50% battery life because it's cold outside and I get wet socks, and so on. For example, I recently discovered that the only days when I feel down and out of energy are when I'm recovering from a hangover. So I eliminated most of these days by no longer getting faced while partying, except on special occasions. It is not only easier to say what makes you unhappy, but it is also usually easier to know what to do about it. Focus. Here's an unusual one. This was famously stated by Steve Jobs. People believe that focus means saying yes to the things on which you must concentrate, but this is not the case. It entails saying no to the 100 other good ideas that exist. Medication. On the subject of naive interventionism, medication is likely to rank first. Medication plagues our society, exposing you to an unknown, unlimited downside. Investing for the sake of a known small upside is not a good strategy, especially when dealing with your most valuable asset. Except in extreme cases, your body avoids all medications and doctor visits. Oliver Wendell Holmes was a physician and poet who lived in the 19th century. It would be better for humans if all medications were dumped in the sea, but it would be worse for the fish. And this is how Nassim Taleb puts it. Give someone a personal doctor if you want to hasten his death. This may be the only way to murder someone while remaining perfectly legal. Number 10. Optionality and the potential pitfalls of wealth. Consider what happens when you achieve success through a large amount of wealth. Here's an intriguing property. You've become more vulnerable because you now have more to lose than to gain. It's the inverse of the barbell strategy from the previous video. Excess wealth is a heavy burden above a certain level. It forces people to complicate their lives through wealth without true optionality. The ability to judge whomever you want and spend your time with whomever you want is not a wealth worth pursuing. And, of course, wealth, when used correctly, can be an agent of optionality. It's difficult to go heli skiing while eating at a Michelin-starred restaurant or purchasing VIP. Tickets to the next UFC event are not expensive. Many people are poor against their will and only become strong by telling themselves that it was their choice to be poor, as if they ever had the option. You convince yourself that the grapes you can't reach are sour, so you want money, but you also want the option to grow with your wealth. A top executive at a large corporation typically has a lot of money, but does he really have options? I would disagree. He does not. His wealth has only exacerbated matters. He's not free with his time because he's expected to arrive in New York on Monday, Buenos Aires on Wednesday, and Tokyo on Friday, where he'll also spend the weekend. He's not free with his opinions because criticizing the company's CEO could result in him losing his job, which would be problematic because his lifestyle is dependent on that income. 3 children who aspire to attend Harvard, a wife who is a shopaholic and probably married him to satisfy that need, and a large mortgage on 4 different luxury vacation homes. You know the drill. Greed is anti-income. Instead of the top executive situation, strive for true FU circumstances. This is known as the treadmill effect. Money link in the description for a summary of the same named book. By the way, Nassim Taleb defines it as a method of achieving independence and the ability to only occupy your mind with matters of personal interest. This is why I strive for wealth myself. A fat wallet, not too many possessions that bind me to one place geographically, being able to say no to anyone but not having to do so too frequently, and being able to spend my time. However, I do not want what our boss does not want. Our client wants it the way I want it, and that's the end of Nassim Taleb Antifragile. To summarize, something that has been around for a long time is by definition robust or antifragile because it has survived the ultimate stressor time. When it comes to causality, there's more to it than meets the eye. Humans are interested in narratives, but reality is only interested in results and getting things done. In many cases, less is more because less carries more signal and more carries more noise in relative terms. Of course, knowing what not to do is more robust than knowing what to do. Mishandled money causes more problems than perks. Optionality should follow. Otherwise, you will never achieve financial freedom. This is a fantastic book. Thank you for also watching the entire video.